I'm Iain Lampert. I've been doing speech contests since 2006, so coming on 20 years. I've been coaching for the last 15 years. The biggest difference, I'd say, between my approach and the approach of a lot of Toastmasters is when folks do Toastmasters contests, that tends to be concentrated around a single season. And the big focus in that segment of the season tends to be around delivery above all else. I think based on having to coach elementary, middle, high school, and college competitors, not just within a couple months span, but in season-long contests, this means year-round, I've expanded my view of what it means to win in front of these contest judges in a slightly different way. This presentation is called Fix Your Frickin' Feedback to make it a little bit more effective when you're trying to help your own students or fellow Toastmasters to become better at public speaking contests. The agenda today is the same as the last time. We're going to look at flaws, then frameworks, and how to approach things in the future. Let's begin with flaws. As you know, last time I opened with a video of Miss Teen South Carolina flubbing an answer at a pageant. Now I'm going to show you Miss California doing comparably to Miss Teen South Carolina. What we're going to do is watch her and then imagine that you're her speech coach. You're like Polly in the corner. If this was Rocky, she just finished boxing. She's coming back. You're her coach. What are you going to tell her? Let's see.
For California, judge number 4, Nigel Barker, has your question.
Hi there, good evening. Now, one of the inequality, how do we narrow the gap between the rich and the poor?
When it comes to social and economic equality, I think that the rich and the poor need to stop being so segregated. I think there is a middle class. I think that the rich need to
Take a breath.
I think that the rich need to be able to be giving, and I think the poor need to work hard, and I think the middle class need to come together and find an in-between. Thank you.
She comes back. All right, coach, how did I do? What can I do better? What do you tell Miss California? Liz.
She started a lot of her phrases with "I think." When you're saying something, people already know that's what you think.
Okay. Maybe you shouldn't be saying "I
Hello?
think" as often. Change your sentence starters. That's actionable. What
Hello?
else? All right, she says, I'm not going to say "I think" as often. What else does she say?
Mm. Mm.
I actually didn't think she had a horrible response. I mean, she paused for a little bit, but she restated the question. She gave some good ideas, and she's young. You can't expect her to know how to solve the word. We don't know how to solve these problems, but I didn't think she was horrible, especially not compared to the one we saw last time. Much better.
Oh. Mm.
So she gets out, she says, if I just don't say "I think" anymore, then I'm not going to be tagged on YouTube as if I flub my answers. That's the fix?
Could have had more to say, but she's cute. I mean, not everybody can be cute and smart. But she's not horrible at what she said.
Okay. So I just stop saying "I think" and I get back out there and it's all good.
No.
Just smile and don't talk.
Okay. So I don't say "I think" and I don't say anything else either. I'm asked, what about inequality? And I say, until I step down.
I would tell her, I would tell her to think about people you know or your experiences with that so that people can relate to.
Okay. So I don't know what her economic background is. Let's say that she grew up middle class. She stops saying "I think" and she says, I grew up middle class. I don't know what it's like to experience extreme poverty or the privilege of extreme wealth, but it's clear that inequality is something that's ravaged this country, is dividing us. And so the more we can support programs that help bring people together economically and socially, that's the right step. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to solve this persistent decades-long issue in a 60-second soundbite, but we should prioritize this on a policy and personal level.
Yeah, exactly what she should have said.
Now, overall, it's true that she did not do as badly as Miss Teen South Carolina. What she said was not word salad, not in the same way. But let's see if there's other things we can notice if we go back and we play her answer on ×2 speed.
Nigel Barker has your question.
Hi there, good evening. Now, one of the inequality. How do we narrow the gap between the rich and the poor?
When it comes to social and economic equality, I think that the rich and the poor need to stop being so segregated. I think there is a middle class. I think that the rich need to... I think that the rich need to be able to be giving, and I think the poor need to work hard, and I think the middle class need to come together and find an in between. Thank you.
What do we notice on ×2 speed?
Just pause for her audience when they were acknowledging what she said, which I thought was good. I think it looks stupid to speak with your arm like this, but it is a beauty pageant.
He gave 3 ideas, actionable or thought-provoking ideas on how to address that. Ultimately, and I commend her for taking that pause. That's something we should do. TEDx speakers, you guys know that that's a good strategy when you want to regroup and collect your thoughts. I think she did a decent job with the second half of her answer.
I love that you pointed out second half of the answer. That's the perfect lead-in to what I'd like to discuss. Because one of the reasons that she felt lost in the first half, even though she pivoted in the second half to what you should say in pageants, which is we're going to come together, we're going to move forward, is I think she's missing a clear statement of what the problem is. All she needs to say is income inequality is terrible. We're thinking about it right now. It divides us. Maybe it manifests in terms of access to houses or to healthcare. She does not need to be that specific, but she can easily fill those first 15 to 30 seconds by just telling us that she acknowledges the problem. And if she came into this with a very clear framework of whatever they say the question is, it's probably because there is some kind of issue. Empathize with the issue, and then you can pivot to a fairly generic solution. This is a pageant. It's not a policy proposal. Then she wouldn't be in that position where she pauses, gathers her breath, needs the audience's support. And I think others would say she nailed it. Because you're right. Unlike Miss Teen South Carolina, which was done 8 to 10 years prior to this, she's not making obvious and immediate mistakes in the same way. It's just not smooth enough for her to win this pageant. So let's go past this example to some of these flaws. You notice that when Ruth pointed out she should start being more specific and talk about her personal stories or her connection to it, that ties into this first piece of advice. As soon as you see what the worst version looks like, display what you believe the better version looks like to the person that you're coaching. It is very unhelpful to say, I don't like that hook, if you're not going to couple it with, try this hook. Sometimes you might be physically unable to demonstrate the thing that you want to show. If I've got time, I'm going to show you one of my students from 2018. He took second place in the country in a acting category. Part of that category involved him doing a dance across the stage. He was a professional tap dancer. And so there was a big moment where he jumps and he clicks his heels a couple times. I'm not able to jump and click my heels as dexterously as he was at age 18. But if I could demonstrate to the best of my ability, this is the thing that I'm going for, showing the minimal viable version of that, then he knows what he's supposed to do. Same thing is true here. If you are struggling to articulate what the better version looks like, I think that what you might say to a student is, that hook isn't quite hitting for me, but I don't have a better version yet. Let me get back to you about what the better version might sound like, because I don't want you to change it to something worse until I can show you what's better. 1 star for every 2 wishes. A star and a wish is a very nice way to express a compliment versus a critique. Saying a star is That's beautiful. Darling, you're a star. There's nothing to change. A wish is, I think this can be better. Sometimes people layer on the compliments. I think for a contest purpose, which is separate from a confidence purpose, layering on the compliments is not that helpful.
Mm-hmm.
You just want to do enough so that they know I'm doing something right. Right, coach? Something's still good.
Yeah.
You can sift through all of this haystack of critiques and find me one golden needle. But by and large, you want to give them a 1-to-2 ratio of something good versus something that should be improved. Notice also I've got this order 20, 60, 20. The first 20% of what you say is a compliment. The 60 in the middle is the critique. The last 20 is, but you're on the right track, if they are. Too much compliment risks credibility. Third, if you can't deliver it, find a demonstration. I'll give an example of this. I was coaching a student just a couple days ago, and they were doing a interesting kind of performance where you weave together a bunch of different pieces, poetry and drama and prose, into one 10-minute performance around a single theme. Their topic was on mental health support for Asian teens. Very, very specific topic. As part of their presentation, they mimed pulling down this slideshow, kind of like a sound. And then they did a sound as if they were clicking on some kind of clicker. Now, that sound that I just made is not the ideal sound that I want them to make. I want them to make more of like a TikTok sound, but better than that. I tried a couple times to say, I want to, and I said, that's not it. You need to do better than what I want. So I went online to find the version of what I wanted until they got there. Feel free to outsource some of your demonstrating to a demonstration that somebody else put up. Oftentimes, you might want somebody to do an interesting voice, like an accent or an impression. Some impressions I can do well. I like my Trump impression. I think my Trump impression can be very good. I don't really have a JD Vance. We don't have a JD Vance here. I don't have one. And so if I wanted someone to do a JD Vance, I'd have to find one online to show them. Finally, I say confirm understanding through mirroring, not monologuing. 2 days ago, I was working with a group of 5 elementary schoolers. For those elementary schoolers, I realized very quickly that lecturing at them was going to go entirely over their heads. And they were going to lose focus quickly. So I said, instead of each of you giving a 5-minute speech, you're going to do a group speech together. That means each of you takes 1 out of the 5 minutes. One of you does the hook, one of you does the first point, second, third, conclusion. As you all speak, I'm going to mirror the facial expression and the body language that you're giving me. I did an exaggerated version of this. So the students who were fidgeting saw me fidgeting excessively and they stopped. The students who were gesturing wildly saw me doing the same thing to them. They said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm just mirroring you." And they stopped. The more that they are performing and they're getting the mirrored feedback from us, the faster they can improve. One of the issues that I have as I'm practicing for this TEDx is I drop certain words at the ends of sentences. The way I would say it normally is I drop certain words at the ends of sentences. It'd be helpful to me from a coaching perspective if as soon as I did it, I got a verbal confirmation from my coach where I said, I'm dropping words at the ends of sentences. And they chime in, ends of sentences. You did it again. That tells me in the moment what I have to fix. Too much of it is annoying. The coach should confirm we're doing a stop and start before we start doing the stop and start. But that's actionable, helpful, and immediate. The same way as if I was doing ballet and I wasn't in the proper pose, the ballet teacher came with the ruler and corrected me. When I say here have a balance of quotes and questions, a quote is just you're telling them what to do. You are quoting yourself. A question gets them to fill in the blank. Having them fill in the blank matters a whole lot here. Let's say a speech comes up to you with 0 structure, and you think that matters. I might just ask, hey, you notice that some speeches have structure? They might say, sure, or what do you mean? If they say, what do you mean? That means they just don't know they're supposed to do this. And I figured that out fast. If they say, sure, I'll say, why? Why is it important for a speech to have a very clear beginning, middle, and end? They'll say in their own words. Okay, do you think that your middle is as clear as it could be? If we had to move around one paragraph here, which paragraph would you move around? The more that they verbally confirm what the right step to take is, the easier it will be to get improvement from them later on. All of this assumes, of course, you've got the time to have this kind of conversation. Sometimes you have to go fast and just say, fix these 5 things. This assumes an ideal circumstance. Question or thought from Liz?
You correctly. You're actually working with grade schoolers who are teaching them this stuff?
Yeah, all ages, but some of the times it's grade schoolers who compete against high schoolers.
And have these kids either decided to do this, or are you working with everybody? Are they the gifted? I don't know. I mean, I know you can teach people instruments and dance, so maybe why not speech? But I'm just not familiar. I'm old too. This wasn't available when I was their age, but I think it's wonderful. And the question that's lurking in the back of my mind is, have you worked with grade schoolers and then gone all the way up and seen how they can progress, till they get to be an adult? Or what if I would have had that? Those are the thoughts that are running through my head.
So I have not worked with someone for 20 plus years straight at this stage. I think the closest is students who I've worked when they were in grade school and now they're in college across the span of time. But I can show you some videos of the grade schoolers competing that you might find interesting later on. Okay, let's go to step 2, frameworks. Different frameworks to give more effective feedback now that we have the general principles down. This is a video that I didn't quite get to show you the first time about, but I'm very happy to. eBaum's World used to be like a YouTube that people went on. This was one of the most viral videos on eBaum's World. It's somebody attempting to give effective sports commentary. Imagine that you're his producer after he gets off the set and he says, all right, coach, all right, producer, how could I be better at giving sports commentary?
Hello, everyone. Well, the Ball State softball team continued to play this weekend, and they were hoping to continue off of their straight 3 out of 4 losses. And so we'll take a look and see how that happened. They started off good, but then eventually, the Ball State women's team shut down and ended up doing poorly. Oh no. And okay, we're going to continue on now. And the Ladies Cardinals will play an Iowa tournament starting this Friday. Before the Ball State baseball team kicks off its conference season this weekend, the Cards will battle an in-state rival Indiana tomorrow. Tomorrow's game will be the meeting between the two, beating both first. Hoosiers are on the 4 on the year, and they have won 6 of its last 7 games. Tomorrow will be the game 3 at 3 p.m. Switching to Ball State men's tennis, it seems every week they have a player. Matt Lawrence is the latest Cardinals tennis player to win the award. Lamar won all the singles and doubles matches last week. So far, the Cardinals have had a player honored on the weekly awards. 7 out of the 9.
I think he's been through enough. He walks off the set. Okay, coach, what do I do?
Get excited.
Get excited? So soon the Ball State women's team will win. Is that better?
No.
Oh.
For this job yet. They shouldn't have slated him for this yet. He's nowhere near ready.
But I want to get there, coach. I really do. I was told get excited. That seems like advice. Jennifer? You're muted.
Just admit, I'm thank you for all witnessing my going down in flames, but I promise you we'll come out on the other side better for it, rising like the phoenix from the ashes or something like that. Just maybe add some humor, acknowledge the obvious, and continue. Sometimes the humor unlocks the tension, and then the flow comes in.
Get some authenticity in there. So I'll ask you, Coach, when do I do that? As soon as I mess up? After 2 mess ups? After 3 mess ups? During the pause?
After 3. I think three would be the limit. I don't know. It's kind of an instinctive thing. Just when you're at a loss for anything else that might be effective, use humor as a fallback, and authenticity.
And I'll take that, because what you said there is very interesting. In one breath, it's after 3. In the other, it's trust your instinct. And I think that could create 2 very different brands of advice. Do we trust this guy to trust his instinct?
Really?
Yeah. Not when this recording was made. But who knows? I don't know. And again, it goes into, I think you were talking about having a framework, being prepared, having some idea of the way that things should go. Also, I think he was using a teleprompter. And when you lose your place in a teleprompter, when the teleprompter gets ahead of you, you really are, that what he did is what happens often.
Very true. Very true. And I also saw he had some notes in front of him that must have been blank, or else been incomprehensible.
He couldn't find his place on the notes. Have been there.
Keith.
It seems like he really needs to practice. He's not ready for prime time. And if he filmed himself going through this and did it honestly and worked with somebody, I think, he probably could be very good.
So I'll ask you, Coach, how often? I film myself once, twice, someone like this, what do I do?
Until
right now, I would film daily for as long as you can do it. I mean,
okay.
It's really, to me, it's the more you practice, the better you're going to get.
Certain limit on the amount of practice I should do per day, Coach, or as long as I can do?
I would at least do it a couple, 3 hours a day.
Okay, so 3 hours.
This is going to be your life, your career.
When you say a couple, 3 hours a day, is that 6 hours? So 3 times 2, or 3 hours per day, then 3 hours another day?
No, I would say initially do 2-3 hours, and unless you start seeing a real decline in what's going on, which would be pretty hard, but.
Okay, let me go to Ruth.
Yeah, tell him to join Toastmasters, practice, become more confident, and then go try it again.
Okay, and Liz, I saw a moment ago.
I think what you're asking him to do is give a jazz recital. And that's an advanced skill. You have to know all your chords, your scales, and make it look easy, but he doesn't have the rudiments down. So he shouldn't be up there until he's ready. And he just has to grow. And he might not be called to do this either, but he has to learn about speaking. He needs to know more about sports too. When you watch that video, nothing that he said had anything that aligned with it. He could have just been able to look at it and made comments off of it. So there's just so many more skills which he needs to grow. And it's wrong whoever put him up here and let this video go out.
So we're trying to improve this guy. We've got join Toastmasters once or twice a week. We've got do 2 or 3 hours of practice and playback per day. And the reason I'm trying to get to this level of specificity is because when we assign people to work outside of the designated performance time, it's very easy to say practice. But most students don't really know what that means. If they knew how to practice properly, they would already be practicing properly. I would start approaching it as if you were a fitness or nutrition coach. This is the number of reps that you do. Here's why you do that number of reps. Here's how you hold yourself accountable. Here's your fallback if you can't do the normal number of reps. I use this example. For the Nintendo Switch, there's this game that's called Fitness Boxing 3. You grab the 2 Joy-Cons of the Switch, and then you box forward according to the rhythm. That's my fallback if I don't go to the gym. And I know that I have to go for 20 to 30 minutes on a daily basis doing 2 specific exercises there if I'm on that fallback. The same thing is true for public speaking. There's a million drills, and I'm going to show you one of them that I recorded live a couple days ago. But if they don't have the specific drill to practice with, he might watch back his recording, Keith, And when he watches it back, he might say, yeah, this is pretty bad, and not know how to go to the next step.
That's
Liz, your
right.
thoughts?
Took improv classes and also stand up. And one of the things they had us do was watch a lot of comedians and found the one that resonated with us. And I'm thinking if he really does think he should be doing sports reporting, there's got to be lots of professional people. And maybe he's watching them and then dissecting what they're doing well, or just the types of reporting that's available for sports. Because I don't even know if he has that vocabulary.
So if I'm coaching him, I think I say, this is one reporter to whom you should aspire. This is the clip I want you to watch. You find me another one, this is your homework, that you think would complement the style of this one I've given you. And you tell me why you think this one should complement it. The example that I would give is when I was in high school, I did a whole lot of competitive impromptu speaking. Nowadays, it's table topics. But I didn't study spontaneous speaking contestants. I aspired to be like the comedians on Whose Line Is It Anyway? So I watched their tapes religiously. And that wouldn't be enough for me to just passively absorb them. When I saw the prompts from Whose Line, for example, scenes from a hat, like world's worst teacher, before I saw their answers, I paused. I recorded myself. Back then, I didn't use a phone. I used a little audio cassette tape. And then I compared the recording that I got to what the professionals actually did and tried to see what's the delta. But that's hyper specific. And I think this guy needs hyper specifics to get there. Let's get past the video example into some feedback frameworks to help that gentleman get there. SSS, style, structure, and substance. I generally use this because it's memorable and it's very easy for me to jump into when I'm on the spot to give feedback in this Toastmasters club. What's one adjective you would use to describe that guy's style?
Incompetent. That's not a style.
Uncertain, tentative.
Sleepy?
Mhm.
So dull.
Insecure.
He does look nice. He's dressed well, though. Yeah, at least that part he's got down.
Insecure, sleepy, and incompetent, but well-dressed.
Nice haircut too.
Yeah, he did.
Well, and he did look at the camera most of the times directly, which getting him credit.
That's why yeah, that's why I thought he was on the teleprompter.
And we could understand him.
Mm-hmm.
Here's one way to get to the core of somebody's style of speaking. I might call it the watermelon drill, because watermelon is a great nonsense word. But for the purposes of this drill, I'd like a different word. Ruth, can I get any random word with multiple syllables from you? Doesn't matter what it is.
Tangerine.
Tangerine, great. And Jennifer, can I get a table topics style prompt? Doesn't matter what it is.
How would you please describe how you would explain your worst day to someone else or best?
Tangerine.
Mm-hmm.
Tangerine. Tangerine, tangerine, tangerine. Tangerine, tangerine, tangerine. Tangerine, 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 tangerine. 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 If you discerned any adjectives from that nonsense drill, and I assume you would discern discontent leading to some kind of certainty near the end, that means that somebody can vary their style enough to earn positive adjectives. If you've got somebody that's totally monotonous, that drill's one of the better ways to get them to realize their monotony. And by the way, monotonous doesn't just mean dull. If somebody's at the same high energy for 10 minutes, that's also monotonous. On structure. In general, the structures that I recommend tend to follow a problem to solution format. Most good speeches do. Almost every successful international contest speech begins with, fellow Toastmasters, have you ever had a problem? Well, one time I was driving along the street and somebody hit my car. And I thought, this is terrible. It's so bad. Have you ever thought this is so bad? Well, I remembered to put on, insert prop, my thinking cap. And when you have your thinking cap, you can start thinking, this doesn't need to be so bad. Every speech. And then within that, there's obviously some nuance and there can be a little bit more depth, but that's what this is. The substance is where you get that nuance and depth. Every critique that you give under this framework touches on these three things in order. VCR, this is best for when you've got some kind of presentation that involves audience participation. A defense of a thesis, when they're going to ask you questions after, is a good example of this. Vibes, that's the same thing as style. What adjectives would you use to describe how you present yourself? Clarity is, do they get what you're talking about? I've worked with some professional expert witnesses. They're very smart people. They're often bad at expressing the things that they deeply know. Clarity through analogy. Clarity by simplicity. This matters a lot. Responses, that's twofold. First, it's the nonverbal responses that you get from your audience as you speak. None of you have seen me speak in person in front of you. But when I speak in person in front of people, I tend to slightly nod as I talk because that activates some mirror neurons in the people to whom I'm speaking and they start nodding back. Then comedy obviously leads to a laughter response, but asking questions leads to responses. Giving space for participation, like I've been doing every 5 to 10 minutes when I show you another video, that leads to responses. When you assess somebody's presentation, I like the VCR framework. Let me pause. Anything not make sense about the first two? I'll move on to the latter. Oh, Liz.
I just wanted to comment. I think it would be so funny if you made a video parodying how most Toastmasters contest winning speeches are constructed.
I might. I just might. I'll find a random prop around the room. I thought I had to start charging up my life. Fellow Toastmasters, have you ever run out of battery? Emotional battery? Number 3, EEC. Example, effect, change, or continue. This is the one that's best done by asking questions. Imagine for a moment that I'm speaking to the first speaker, the Miss California speaker. I would say, now I noticed something in your speech. It's when you gave that pause and the audience started applauding you. Why do you think they started applauding you? What was the effect of that? Well, they were rooting for me. They wanted me to succeed. Why did they have to root for you? I guess because they thought maybe I needed the support. Why might they think that? Because it seemed like I didn't know what I was talking about. I was pausing. I was nervous. Sure. Do you want to experience that again? You want to continue it or no? I don't want to experience that again. I like the support, but I'd rather it be because I'm succeeding, not because I need help. Okay, now let's talk about that. This is best done when you've got a speaker who doesn't seem to recognize that they have a problem. Finally, Pendleton method. I really like this one when you have speakers who are already highly competent. Their speech finishes. Hey, what do you think was good there? What went well? If they articulate everything that you were about to tell them, great. They're fully on the same page. Hey, what do you think could have been better about that performance? If they articulate everything that you were about to tell them, great. But if they say everything to improve that you were about to tell them, the follow-up question then becomes, why wasn't that improved? If you knew that that was a deficiency. And the answer might be, I'm not sure how to get there. That focuses the coaching conversation. I'll pause. Any questions on the latter two? Liz.
What's it called, Pendleton?
Comes from some kind of medical thing. I think the guy was Pendleton.
Oh.
not so much a question, but just a comment. I think that we, this club, could probably put Pendleton to good work, to good use. Yeah.
Oh yeah. The club I used to belong to, the last year I was there, we decided to start before the evaluation or coaching, as we say, to ask the speaker, how do you think you did? What was good? What needs improvement?
Yeah.
And sometimes you got a whole lot, and other times they would say, I think it was pretty good, but I'd like to hear what you guys think.
Mm-hmm.
In the Pendleton method, you would then say, I understand you think it's pretty good. Why?
Mm-hmm. Be specific.
Name what was pretty good about it.
Mm-hmm.
See if we're on the same page. I also think that if there's speakers who are very self-critical, Pendleton forces them to recognize what is good about them. And if they are quite bad at that, or if they don't want to brag for whatever reason, then you have an opportunity to develop a special relationship with them by offering them very specific compliments.
Mm-hmm.
Some speakers say, no one else ever saw that in me.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for recognizing that. I didn't realize I had that as a superpower. That's awesome. Okay. Now for the future. What do we do going forward? We love using outlines. We love outlines. Outlines are incredible.
Please.
This is an example of an outline that's used for professional public speaking contest hooks that are a little bit more research-based than the international speech contest tends to be. For example, the Professional Speech Debate Association. This is how I would start the first 200 words. What's the hook? A sentence that links from the hook to the broader problem they're discussing. A citation that proves it's a problem. Quick examples. We see this everywhere at the grocery store. We see this in the shopping mall. What your big thesis is, your roadmap, and one catchy one-liner. I don't use this to say, make all of your speeches this. The point is, if you're coaching someone on a specific speech style, and you aren't coming into it with what you believe the median speech outline should look like, it's going to be very hard to give comments on the structure of the speech. If you know that you're going to coach someone on a keynote, determine for yourself what's the ideal structure of a keynote. They don't need to necessarily conform to your ideal structure, but it might be that they're missing an element that you think, even if it's in a different order, should be there in all keynotes. Anything not make sense about that? Similarly, checklists are very useful here. This is the same style of competitive research-based speech. One of them is an oratory. That's a persuasive speech that's 10 minutes. Others an informative. That's an expository speech that's 10 minutes. I have this checklist of things because if they say, Coach Iain, I don't know how to improve this. I'm missing more substance. I need different examples. I look towards this checklist. And I say, well, I see the issue. It's a 10-minute long speech, and at no point do you describe why you are the right messenger for it. Or, yeah, it's a very good speech. You're doing everything except the last thing at the bottom where it says audience engagement / use of space. Let's block out a thing for 30 seconds where you leave the podium and do something cool in the audience. I advise everyone, if you're coaching, make your own checklist. What are things that you think could generally add value to a speech? That way, you'll always have something to say. Or if you don't have something to say immediately because they're doing all of these things, then you choose the lever that's the weakest. You say, yeah, it's true. You are giving me analysis about how other countries do this, but the countries that you've chosen are too similar to the United States. Don't tell me what Canada does. Tell me what Denmark does. Tell me what South Korea does. Anything that doesn't make sense here? Yeah, Liz.
Doesn't make sense, but I'm just wondering, I don't know if you've competed in table topics yourself, but if you do you like have these lists in your head and what are you running through? Because it's like a mini speech.
Yeah, for table topics, it's there's a hook, there's a problem, there's a solution. And the question is, which lever do I pull in the hook? Do I go for ethos and I try to be super credible when I speak? Do I sing? Do I go around the room in a really dynamic way? I think so much of table topics is the hook and you ending on an optimistic note.
And not going overtime.
Yep. I tend to go under time when I do practice table topics in this club, for example. I normally talk for minute 30 to a minute 40. I guess not under time, but I don't normally hit the 2 minutes because I want to be safe. And I think that if I said everything I need to say, I don't need to extend it. That differs from the category of impromptu speaking where you have a 5 minute speech. And if you don't fill the 5 minutes exactly, you're probably not going to win. In table topics, you can win with a minute 45 speech. I'll keep on here for a moment. Let me know if anything doesn't make sense.
One another question. So are all the students you're working with giving prep speeches, or do you ever have them like memorize or become familiar with these frameworks and then have them try a 5 minute speech to see how they can pull this together just as a way of practicing?
Yes, I would say that a third of the time it's spontaneous speaking. Okay. I said that I had a video. Let me set up the video, then show it to you. These are two competitors who are nationally ranked in informative speaking. This is a high school category. They have 10 minutes to speak. One of the competitors had a big problem with being too loud for the room. At the start of the year, she got a bunch of first places. Now she's getting seconds and thirds. And the comment is everyone else kind of caught up to her. She was more polished more quickly than everybody else, but now they're as polished as she was, and they have more levels. So I said, your tendency is to get too loud. I want you, even if there's a bunch of noise coming at you, to be clear but not overbearing. The second student is too quiet. So I said, even if there's another competitor giving you noise, I want you to speak over them so that you're able to be heard. This is them doing what I would call a distraction drill. You can do this even if it's just you with one student, because you can talk at them as they're speaking, always. Let me show you.
I gotta say, my high school is wild. I walked in as a freshman.
What do you mean you can't
remember?
Were you
I don't know,
at
you
the
could be
scene or
Korean
not?
barbecue.
You said
Every
you saw the
club,
defendant
program, and
Scooby-Doo
especially junior
poison
ROTC.
the food.
My schools could
If
go
it was so
further,
shocking,
wanted in peace.
why can't
Of
you
me.
remember?
It's like there's some unspoken rule that if you're of Asian ancestry,
easy
you must
to tear
become
someone
part of
apart for
ROTC.
not remembering.
Seriously,
sometimes
look at our
it's
schools
our
for that
memories
photo.
that tear
Asian,
themselves
Asian,
apart.
Asian.
Memory is the foundation of our
Oh,
existence. Yet it can be fragile,
Asian.
unpredictable, and unreliable.
Guess, which one do you think was trying to speak up? On the right or on the left?
On the right.
On the left.
I guess I should be clear. Can you see my my mouse right now as I'm moving it?
Yeah,
Right.
that's the one I think is the one that was trying to speak up, that wasn't speaking loud enough.
That's correct.
Mhm.
She's trying to speak up. Meanwhile, she's trying to tone it down because she's naturally very loud. I can notice so much from this. And one of the ways I notice a lot is I just play it back with no volume. I see that one of the problems here is she was beginning the speech doing this acting out a cross-examination, but instead of making the audience, the people she's cross-examining, she was making, in theory, there'd be these visual aids next to her. She was cross-examining her visual aids. That's not effective. So immediately I could say, well, that's why you start off too quiet. You're not facing the audience. They're not hearing your voice. You can find that out in a couple seconds.
Wow.
Meanwhile, with Kathleen over here, it's clear to me that I can still hear her, but she's not too loud at this stage. She just naturally has a lot of projection. I'm sure you picked up on some of their styles. If you had to describe their styles, go back to SSS. What would you ascribe to the speaker on the left?
She has good gestures, a lot of confidence.
Confident, yeah. Assertive.
What about the speaker on the right?
Passionate. The speaker on the right is uncertain, still building her confidence. It comes across to me as.
I would agree.
Mm-hmm.
You can watch it back with zero volume.
Mm-hmm.
You can watch it back with only the volume. I think people would largely arrive at the same conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn so much from just 30 seconds of a drill like this. And there's so many drills that are like this. I'll continue. I talked about this last time, the idea of a blue ocean strategy for competitions. Blue ocean in business terms basically means trying to activate a market where your competition is not. The classic example of this is PlayStation versus Xbox are kind of the same gaming console, going after kind of the same market. But the Nintendo Switch is not. The Nintendo Switch is not for gamers, it's for everyone. It's for adults who want to work out doing the fitness boxing game. It's for kids who are playing Legend of Zelda or Mario or Pokemon. It's not a bunch of shooters like Halo or Left 4 Dead or The Last of Us. They're just trying to do something else. But it's still a game system that works. If your competitors come away from you and they say, I know that I'm doing the minimum viable thing so that people recognize my structure as being part of this contest. I'm not doing something crazily off base, but I recognize the unique talents that I can bring to bear or the unique life experiences that I can share. Then that is probably a viable contest speech. I want to show the video that I mentioned before of an elementary schooler performing because Liz asked about that. I'll leave this open for a moment. If you're watching this, email me, Iain, IAIN, 2 eyes like the ones on my face at athentalk.org. But I would like to show you this elementary schooler now. One moment, let me bring it up. As I'm doing that, any questions or concerns? Not hearing any, so let's just get to an elementary schooler right now. I have this big playlist, I'll show you right here, of all of the students who work with this K through 12 company who have won championships in the last calendar year and the year before that, etc.
These people, are these people that are gifted at language, or their parents sign them up? They sign themselves up? Where do they come? What's your pool of people?
Their parents generally sign themselves up for college prep purposes. They want to win contests, so they're either going to get into college because of the wins or to generally get more confident. But in order to get onto the national competition team, they have to interview their way in. So I'll show you just a little bit of this elementary schooler performing.
Mom, could I please get some ice cream? It looks so good. I've been thinking about getting a sweet treat on a sunny day. If so, then we can both agree that ice cream is delicious. We must learn the background of ice cream so we can be educated on what we eat. Today, I'll be explaining the history, the present, and the future of ice cream. According to the IDFA, or the International Dairy Foods Association, the origins of ice cream are traced back to ancient Persia as far as 500 BC.
Very fun. Let's move ahead, though, to what a high schooler doing this might look like. It's
These
quite
kids
different.
are Asian. Is it because their parents know that they have to have this to get into school, or is it an Asian school?
No, it just happens to be a market that's very interested in it. I'll show you a student who is not that.
Okay.
I'll show you this. This was a student who is now a coach who works with me. She won the national championship in spontaneous speaking in 2017. And then I will show you the student doing the heel click. This is another high schooler who had also won in a different category in the same year. I'll put them side by side. This is spontaneous speaking. It's a 5-minute speech. The topic she got was a Albert Camus quote that man is an idea, a precious small idea without love. So typically you'd give a speech here saying love and connection are very important. And you give examples of why that's true. That's what she does. But I'll just show you the intro.
Topic, plague. Man,
yeah, there are, being from California, there are some things that I'm used to. avocados, drought, and earthquakes. But what I'm not at all used to is being shoved into a gym with no windows in the middle of a speech and debate tournament because of a tornado warning. I thought a couple of things. First, I thought I was going to die. Here I am. Second, I thought impromptu wasn't going to happen at all. But the most important thing I learned over that horrible endeavor is that there were so many people around me who understood the situation from parts of the country I'd never been to, who were more than willing to come comfort me as I sobbed thinking about my imminent death. I didn't understand that tornadoes happen all the time, and it's cultural divides like that that often prevent us from understanding the most important thing in life, connecting with others. This is clear in the quote from Albert Camus in The Plague. Man is an idea, a precious small idea, once he turns his back on love. We as a society often don't understand that the most important thing in life is to love and understand one another. Unfortunately, there are many societal divides and barriers that make us a somewhat loveless society. However, once we first understand the cause of our lack of love, which is the false consensus effect, next, we'll understand the horrible impacts of a lack of love because of cultural and political divides through the Wall Street Journal's red feed, blue feed. And finally, we'll come to a very loving solution by analyzing the 2010 Egypt protests. But first.
That's the hook. High school senior. She was the state champion and the national champion. She had 2 minutes to think.
Wow. She could give lessons to the Miss America because it's a somewhat similar.
Yes, just more in depth. And I'll compare that to one of the acting performances. I mentioned that there was a student who had to do the heel click. This is that competitor. He's doing a speech that weaves together a bunch of different ideas about the central theme of using humor to cope with the Holocaust. It's a Jewish student. He's basically advocating for the idea of how can comedy help heal communities by bringing together poetry, plays, etc. I'll just play the first couple minutes so you see what I mean. Oh, and I should mention that use of the binder is permitted in this category as a prop.
Now it's time to celebrate, grab a drink and fix a plate. But before you feel too great, remember that we suffered, even the non-believer may recognize the importance of religious expression in Hitler's Europe. But humor? Well, its pervasiveness during the Nazi period is common knowledge among survivors of Hitler's genocide. Some say being Jewish is a weeping of the heart, while others say it depends on keeping apart from people who aren't Jewish, although it appears that being Jewish may depend a bit on tears. Laughter and horrific events should be mutually exclusive. Holocaust fiction is distinguished by a decorum, an etiquette. An old couple go on a tour of Auschwitz, right? And they get off the bus, and they get into this big fight, and they're not speaking to each other the entire tour. They're not even looking at each other, and they get back onto the bus, and the husband turns to his wife, and he says, fine, okay, you were right, I was wrong. I'm sorry. And the wife turns to her husband, and she says, oh, now you're sorry. Now that you've ruined Auschwitz for me.
That's the hook.
Wow. What an incredible range she has.
Yeah, that's the purpose of the category, show all of that range. So
Mhm.
that's the big takeaway. Today we talked about the idea of feedback, of framework, what we can do in the future. And so whether you're watching this live, you're going to watch this at some point in the future, hopefully this makes you more effective at giving that feedback. That's my presentation.
Mhm.
That was like watching the Heisman Trophy winner for me. You know, it's like